Hi, welcome back to CS170 fall session. We're going to be covering a bit about JavaScript arrays. I kind of talked a little bit about it at the end of my previous lecture with loops. So this is the second major topic or area for JavaScript in this chapter. So let's pick up on what the arrays are. I think I mentioned some of these points already in the prior lecture. So basically, an array is a collection of data elements, right? I think I mentioned it before in the last lecture. We're talking about like essentially like buckets of data, right? And then how do you initialize the array? How do you declare the array? How do you initialize the array? How do you store values in there? And then how do you access those values and pull those things out? That's what we're going to be talking about. Okay. So these are just some different points here. I think similar to some of the other concepts that we've talked about, let's say function names and stuff like that. You would call the array with similar naming convention that we discussed at the beginning when we introduced JavaScript. So that's why I'm saying you're going to use the same rules for variables. Okay. And then you can access it, assign values, and the naming conventions, right? So remember accessing it. You can print it out. You can use it for doing comparisons. You assign the values. You can initialize it in a similar way. You can do like an assign with like, let's say equals or something like that, right? And then, like I said earlier, the naming conventions that you use for variables or function names would be the same. Okay. We generally try to go with camel case. Remember when we talked about camel case, the first word or letter would be lowercase, and then all the subsequent words that come after that would be uppercase with the first letter. Okay. And we're going to do some demo of this in a second. Okay. So here we have something that we're basically, let's say we're storing the hours that you worked at your job for this week, right? So, this area, we're talking about how arrays are named, how they're indexed, and what type of data they're holding, okay? So notice the camel case here. So we set the name, we set the hours worked, right? So there's lowercase h here, hours, and then worked, right? So this is the name of the array. And then what's the data that we put in there? Well, so you have like 50, 75, and 5, 0, 5, 12, 60. And then you have this index. Now, the tricky thing you want to try to remember is like the first bucket in the array always starts at 0, not at 1. Okay, so it's something you want to remember when, let's say you're doing some sort of calculation based on the length of the array, you're doing a loop. Like I said before, it's very common for you to do loops to process arrays, right? So in this case, what's the length of the array? Well, you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're actually saying the length of the array is 6, right? So it's very easy for people to kind of get tripped up and say, oh, it's 5. And that's because you start off with the first bucket at 0. And you think about that from a loop perspective. If I was going to do a for loop to process this, I would probably initialize the counter to be 0. And then I would just say loop through until that counter while the loop is counter is less than the length of the array. Okay, so if the array length is 6, it'll just keep on looping through until you actually hit the counter equal to 6, and then at that point it won't be less than the length of the array, and then it'll exit out of the loop. Okay. So here's for array for declaration. Okay. This part is the declaration right here. So you say var hours worked. All right. So really no different than how you declare a variable, right? Now you're just declaring the array, right? So what actually makes this an array is this part right here. And make sure this is an uppercase A here. This is case sensitive, right? So you would say the new array equals, not equals, it's a new array of 6 elements here, okay? So back to this point here, if I said it was going to be 6, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Remember, start off at 0, okay? So here at this point, I've declared the variable, okay? Nothing else. I've declared the array, I should say. Nothing else, right? I have to find this array with 6 elements in it, okay? So just like what it says here, create 6 index elements. And then, like I mentioned before, it always starts at 0, okay? And like I said before, note the capital A in the array, okay? All right, that's important. If you don't do that, it's not going to work, all right? So you want to make sure you put that in there. So how do we access the bucket? Okay, so in this case, where this red circle is, I want to access this number 3 bucket, which is the 4th element in the array. Okay, so you say hours worked, and you have this open bracket, and you have 3, and then close bracket. This whole thing, like this, is you can treat it essentially like a variable, right? So just like any other variable that you store stuff in or you read, it'll be just like that, really. That's why it says treat like a variable, okay? So if you want to assign it, you have this equal sign. If you want to read it, then you just read it, right? Okay. Here's this point here where I was talking about before, the length of the array, okay? So just like the math function, or when you remember we had the whole thing where you had a number, you had a variable that was a number, you knew it was a number, or and then you put in like .to fixed, right, to make it like 2 decimal places, right? Same thing here, right? Or math.random, right? That type of thing, right? So you have these things, in this case, a variable, where instead of saying 2 fixed, now you have length, right? And that's going to tell you the length of the array. And what does it return? It's going to return 6 because it's the array is 6 buckets, right? And then the first element is 0. And then the last element is the length of the array minus 1. Okay. Here's another example of an array, right? And you have weekdays, and it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they put in like so. Okay. So obviously, when they put in these different days here, like these are strings, right? It doesn't have to be numbers like this one here. So these are strings, they put them all in there, right? And when they say weekdays, I guess they're thinking of this in terms of like days, right? Because if it's weekend, Saturday and Sunday is going here, it shouldn't go into weekdays, right? So, but I guess it doesn't matter. You can stick whatever you want into these arrays, right? But anyway, there's another example of you referencing that bucket, right? So what do you think this would show, right? Weekdays 2, 3. Well, here's weekdays 2, 3. It's going to show us Thursday, right? Because that's what got assigned here, right? Thursday. You have to do alert, and then you will show today to be Thursday, assuming you're looking at this third element here. So there's some more indexing examples and whatnot. I'm going to just do like a quick declare and initialize and loop through before I do this part, and I'll cut another video for that, okay? So you remember js.do, and let me strip this stuff out here. I'm going to take this out here. So JSDL, you remember if you go in here, it provides all these little examples on the left-hand side. I'm just going to take all of them out. Like so, and I guess I can leave the random number in here. I guess that's fine. Let me just run this for now. And so this is the loop right now, goes through like 10 elements, okay? So let me think about this. Let me go back to here. So squeeze both of these on the screen here. And let me see. So our let's work equals. Let me do it this way, where I'll do it like the textbook or like the slide here. And then I'll show you another way that we can put stuff in there. Okay. And hours worked 0 oops, equals to 10. Right, and I'm gonna do this pretty quickly, so I'm just gonna do this, copy paste, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I created extra one here, so I'll get that out. Something like that. Okay, so right now you look up here, I declared this, I've initialized this. And before I get into the loop, let me just do like let me do the alert for number 3 here. Yeah, now we got a 40 up here, right? And we're good to go. Okay, so you can see from here, I've got the array declared, I've got the array populated with some stuff, and I was able to access, in this case, I was looking at bucket number 3. Okay. So now we go to here, and you remember what I was saying about the variable or the counter, right? So I is the thing that you're going to be incrementing. We're going to start off at 0, and we're going to say less than hours worked dot length. Okay. In this case, we have I equals to I plus 1, but we could have done I plus plus, right? Either way, I guess it doesn't matter, right? So I'm going to leave that. So it prints the current number. I don't want to do that. What do I want to do? I'm going to show the hours worked. Show the I for that, which is the bucket. And that should be it here. And this one, if it's less than 10, it'll put the comma in there. In this case, we only have 6, but it doesn't matter. So I think I'm going to just leave that. All right, so let's see what we get here. And you can see it writes out 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So what I just did here is very typical of how you would use a loop to traverse every single element in the array. So notice what I did. I initialized here to 0, the I, which is what I'm incrementing. And I'm saying it's less than the hours worked. Okay. And then this is just to print it out, right? So each of the elements at array at I will get printed out. Okay, so hopefully that's straightforward. Holding to what I said I was going to do, I'm going to keep this video short. We're going to pick up a couple more topics around arrays in the following videos. And I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you.